doorway, half open. You have been standing here longer than you think. Longer than a minute. Longer than an hour, maybe. Not because you are lost, but because you are close. So close that the closeness itself has become its own kind of weight, pressing against your chest like held breath. There is a room on the other side of that door. Call it tomorrow. Call it the version of your life where the waiting stops. You have walked toward it for years, and yet somehow the distance between you and it never quite closes. Not because tomorrow is far, but because of how distance itself behaves when you look at it closely enough. 24 centuries ago, a man in a dusty coastal town sat with this exact discomfort. His name was Zeno. He did not have your life, your deadlines, your late nights scrolling towards some imagined arrival. But he had noticed the same trapdoor beneath the floor of ordinary motion. He asked a simple question: what happens if you try to walk across a room? To reach the wall, he said, you must first reach the halfway point. But before that, the quarter point. Before that, the eighth. An unbroken chain of halves, endless, receding. Each one smaller than the last. None of them ever quite the wall itself. On paper, it is a puzzle about arrows and tortoises. In the body, it is something else entirely. It is the feeling of almost. The feeling of soon. Below hum behind your ribs that says, once this is done, then I will rest. Once that arrives, then I will feel whole. And so we live inside a corridor of halves. Halfway to the promotion. Halfway to the relationship healing. Halfway to the day the noise in your head finally goes quiet. Every half feels like progress. Every half is progress. And yet the wall stays exactly as far as it always was, shimmering just past your fingertips. Patient. Unmoved. This is not a story about ancient Greece. This is a story about the specific ache of a Tuesday evening, when you close your laptop and realize the work still isn't finished. The way it was never finished yesterday. The way it will not be finished tomorrow either. Not because you have failed, but because arrival was never quite the kind of place you imagined it to be. Let this be said plainly before we go further, so the shape of what follows is clear. None of what comes next claims to be historical fact, secret doctrine, or a truth hidden from the world. It is offered as something else. A lens. A piece of old thinking held up to catch a modern light. Take what resonates. Leave the rest at the door. Because underneath the mathematics, underneath the halves and the wall, there is a question that has nothing to do with geometry. What if tomorrow was never a place? What if it was only ever a direction? One your mind invented so that today could feel bearable. Sit with that for a moment. Not to solve it, just to feel its weight settle, like a stone lowered slowly into your open palm. Think of the last time you said the word soon, or almost, or not yet. Notice how easily they came. They are the oldest words we own, older than clocks, older than calendars, worn smooth from centuries of use. A farmer waiting for rain said them. A sailor watching the horizon said them. You tonight checking a phone that will not light up the way you want it to say them too. Maybe that is the real inheritance passed down through all this time. Not a solved equation, but a shared ache. The wall, the waiting, the half step that never quite becomes the whole one. And here, the image begins to change shape. Consider the outer form of this paradox first. The symbol before the wound. Zeno's teacher Parmenides believed that motion itself was an illusion, that beneath the flicker of change, something eternal and unmoving simply is. Zeno's puzzles were built to defend that idea, to show that if you trusted your senses completely, you would trap yourself in contradictions no clever argument could escape. An arrow in flight, he said, occupies one exact place at any given instant. At that instant, is it not simply at rest? And if every instant is a kind of rest, when precisely does the flying happen? There is something almost unbearably intimate in that question, because the arrow does not experience its flight as a sequence of stillnesses. It experiences it as one long, continuous falling toward its target. The same way you do not experience your life as a series of Tuesdays, but as a single unbroken tension stretched between who you were and who you are trying to become. Achilles, the fastest runner in the old stories, races a slow tortoise that has been given a head start. By the time he reaches where the tortoise began, the tortoise has shuffled a little further on. By the time he closes that gap, it has moved again. Smaller now, but still ahead, still just out of reach. On the page, this is a trick of infinite division. In the chest, It is the specific feeling of chasing someone or something that always seems to have left the room 5 minutes before you arrived. Notice this carefully because it matters. The paradox does not claim Achilles never catches the tortoise. It claims something stranger, that the way we count the distance between two things may itself be the trap, long before either of them ever moves an inch. The wall was never lying to you. The counting was. And here, the image changes shape again, from the sky to the street to the room you are sitting in right now. Because the second layer of this is not about arrows. It is about appointments. The therapy session that will finally make things click. The apology that will finally close the wound. The Friday when the inbox empties and the chest, for once, feels light. Each of these is a wall you are walking toward. Each one is real, in the sense that it exists somewhere ahead of you. But notice, gently, without judgment, how often the wall moves the moment you get close enough to touch it. You reach the promotion, and a new distance appears on the other side of it. You reach the reconciliation, and a smaller, quieter distance opens up inside that too. This is not failure. This is the architecture of wanting itself. Built, perhaps, exactly the way Zeno's halves were built, so that completion recedes at precisely the rate you approach it. Think of a horizon on a long drive. It never gets closer, no matter how fast the car moves. It simply rearranges itself around you, mile after mile, keeping the same careful distance it has always kept. This is not a flaw in your speed. It is the nature of horizons. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from this. Not the exhaustion of effort, but the exhaustion of always almost. Your shoulders carry it. Your jaw holds it, faintly clenched even in sleep. The body knows the wall keeps moving long before the mind is willing to admit it. Think of a calendar filled with small red circles. Dates that once felt like they would change everything. The circle arrives. Something shifts, yes, but never the whole shift you were bracing for. A new circle appears further down the page. Quieter, smaller, but unmistakably the same shape as the last one. This is not because you chose the wrong dates. It is because the mind that draws the circles is the same mind that keeps redrawing the wall a little further out the instant your hand gets close to touching it. Ask anyone who has finally reached a long-held goal what the morning after felt like. Often it is quieter than expected. Often there is a strange, disorienting hush, as if the body had been built for chasing and had not been given instructions for what comes after the catch. And here, the image changes shape once more, from the street into something quieter, something closer to the bone. Because underneath the appointments and the milestones, there is a third layer, and this one is personal in a way the others were not. It is the tomorrow you have been walking toward your entire life. The day you become the version of yourself who finally has it handled. Calm, whole, arrived. Ask yourself, without flinching, whether that day has a face. Does it? Or is it simply the next halfway point, dressed up as a destination? This is the trap inside the trap. Not that tomorrow doesn't come. Tomorrow comes constantly, relentlessly on schedule. But that the tomorrow you were promised, the one with the walking stops, was never a place your feet could truly stand on. It was a direction. Gravity, a way of making the present bearable by pointing somewhere else. And yet, here is where the ancient puzzle turns gentle instead of cruel. Because Zeno never denied that Achilles catches the tortoise. He never denied that the arrow lands. He only revealed that if you look too closely at the mechanics of arrival itself seems to dissolve. Which means the error was never in the walking. The error was in believing that walking was only valuable once it stopped. There is a quiet relief hidden in that reversal, if you let it settle. Because it means the years already spent walking were not wasted time, waiting for truer life to begin. They were, perhaps, the truer life, simply worn in a shape you did not yet recognize. Say that once more slowly, and let it land somewhere below the collarbone. The walking was never only a means to the wall. The walking, the actual felt experience of this exact half step, this exact breath, may have been the entire substance of the thing you were chasing all along. There is an old comfort hidden inside this, if you let it in, because if arrival was always a moving target, then you have not been failing at the thing everyone else has quietly mastered. No one else has caught the tortoise either. They are only further along their own chain of halves, carrying their own version of almost, their own jaw held tight against their own particular tomorrow. This does not erase the ache. It only changes what the ache is asking of you. Not hurry so the gap finally closes, But notice, because the gap may never close the way you pictured, here, the voice softens, and the room grows quieter, as if inviting the body to stop listening and start doing. What follows are not instructions. They are invitations, small, quiet acts you might try, alone, in whatever order feels honest to you. First, sit somewhere ordinary, a chair, a floor, the edge of a bed, and simply notice one thing you are currently walking toward. Not a decade from now, something close. Let yourself feel in the body where the wanting sits. Is it in the chest? The stomach? The jaw? Do not try to fix it. Only notice it the way you might notice whether moving across a window. Let a full minute pass before you decide it means anything at all. Second, take a single ordinary task. Washing a dish, tying a shoe, boiling water, and slow it by half. Not to make it symbolic, but to feel directly how strange it is that finishing and doing can be pulled apart at all. Halfway through the motion, pause. Ask, what is happening right now in this half step that finishing would have erased? Notice the temperature of the water, the small sound of the fabric, the weight of the object in your hand. Details that finishing usually rushes past unnoticed. Third, write down, without editing yourself, the sentence that follows the words, "Once I, then I will finally." Read it back. Notice how far away the second half feels. Notice whether it has always felt that far away, no matter how close you got. If you can bear it, write the same sentence again in a week and compare the distance without judging either version. Fourth, choose an evening this week to sit in near darkness for 10 unhurried minutes. No destination for the sitting, no goal for the silence. Let your mind reach for its usual tomorrow and gently, without force, bring it back to the temperature of the room, to the sound of your own breath moving in and out. If 10 minutes feels like too much distance, 5 is enough. There is no wall to reach here either. Fifth, walk somewhere familiar, a hallway, a block, a garden path, and count your steps by halves instead of wholes. Half a step, then half of what remains, then half of that. Notice the almost absurd tenderness of never quite spending the whole step. Notice that you arrive anyway. Let your feet keep the rhythm, even after your mind has stopped bothering to count. 6. Before sleep, name one moment from the day, however small, that had no destination attached to it. A held cup of tea, a voice on the phone, a stretch of ordinary sunlight across a floor. Let that moment be enough, just once, without asking what it was building toward. Say it out loud if you can. Let the room hear it, even if no one else is there. 7th, and quietest of all, ask yourself, without needing an answer tonight, if the wall never moved again, if arrival finally arrived, would you know what to do with the stillness? Sit with not knowing. Let the not knowing be its own kind of rest. Heavy and warm, settling into the shoulders like a hand placed there gently and left. None of these acts will make the have stop appearing. They are not solutions. They are simply ways of turning toward the walking itself, instead of past it, towards some horizon that keeps its exact distance no matter how fast you move. And so we come slowly back to the doorway where we began. The room on the other side of it has not moved. It is still there, patient, half-lit, exactly as far as it always was. Perhaps it will always be exactly this far. Perhaps that is not a flaw in the design of things, but the design itself. Zeno's paradox was never really solved by mathematics. Calculus simply learned to add the halves quickly enough that the mind stopped noticing the gap. But the gap is still there, underneath the equations, the same way it is still there underneath your life. The wall you are walking toward may always recede by exactly the amount you close. This is not a reason for despair. It might instead be permission. Permission to stop treating this exact moment as a hallway to be rushed through on the way to some realer, later room. Because if the tomorrow you are chasing is built the way Zeno's wall was built, then the walking was never the delay. The walking was the entire visit. Somewhere, right now, someone else is standing at their own doorway, counting their own halves, carrying their own particular ache of almost. They will not solve it tonight either. Neither will you, and perhaps that was never truly required. The old paradox did not come with an ending stitched on. It simply pointed at the gap and let the gap remain a gap. Strange, unresolved, quietly humming beneath the surface of ordinary motion. Maybe that is the most honest thing a story about walls and walking can offer. Not a door that finally opens, just a clearer way of standing in front of it, None of this is offered as certainty. It is offered as a way of looking, one lens among many, borrowed from an old paradox and pressed gently against a modern ache. You are free to set it down the moment it stops being useful. But before you do, notice, just once more, the weight in your chest right now. Not the wall ahead of it, not tomorrow. Just this, just the half step you are standing in. Maybe that was always the only room that existed. Not because the other room was a lie. Only because rooms, like walls, like tomorrows, may only ever exist the way the horizon exists. Real enough to walk toward, never quite real enough to stand inside. Let the doorway stay half open, then. Let the wall keep its distance, unmoved and patient. And let this exact breath, this exact weight in the chest, be counted, just once, as enough. Thank you for walking through the dark with me.